Well, hello there, you ravishing person you. This is Chris from TechSpert, and I'm here with two generations of Moto G series smartphones. We've got the Moto G6 Plus from 2018 here on the left, and that fresh new Moto G7 Plus just launched by Motorola in February 2019 here on the right. The Moto G7 Plus is launching at £269. You'll be able to pick it up from March the 1st from the likes of Carphone Warehouse. The G6 Plus is a bit cheaper these days. You can get it for just over £200 again from the likes of Carphone Warehouse. So which one should you go for? If you've got the G6 Plus, should you upgrade to the G7 Plus? Let's do a full side-by-side comparison, and don't forget, for more on the latest and greatest mobile tech, to poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now first up, stick them side by side, and unsurprisingly they're both beasts like pretty much every other smartphone released these days. But the Moto G7 Plus does actually sport a considerably bigger screen, despite the fact that it looks a little bit smaller in comparison to the G6 Plus. You get a 5.9 inch panel here on the older phone. It's a 6.2 inch now on the G7 Plus. The reason for that is, of course, those bezels have really slimmed down. As you can see, quite thick chunky bezels above and below the display on the older G6 model. Here on the newer model, the G7 Plus, you get a much skinnier bezel down beneath, still get a bit of Motorola branding in there, of course, and up top, as you can see, the screen almost reaches to the very top edge as well, with just a bit of nipple notch action. One of the ways that Motorola has been able to trim some of that girth is by shifting the front-mounted fingerprint sensor here on the Moto G6 Plus to the back of the device instead. So as you can see, it's just centrally housed just beneath the camera grille here on the back of the Moto G7 Plus. If it wasn't for that, the Moto G6 Plus and G7 Plus would look very, very similar indeed around the back. In fact, you do still get that Moto branding on both smartphones. It's actually just built into the fingerprint sensor itself here on the fresh new G7 Plus. Both handsets sport a glass back in those. Actually, Gorilla Glass here on the G7 Plus, which I don't believe the old G6 Plus had, but all the same, the G6 Plus is still proven nice and hardy. As you can see, there are no scratches or scuffs, despite the fact that it is basically coming up to a year old. And the G7 Plus should prove even more resistant to any kind of damage. You can pick them both up in a couple of different hues, a darker or a lighter model, and they both sport a water repellent design as well. We definitely wouldn't recommend dropping them in the bath or the sink or anything like that, but they are splash proof, so you can at least take them out in this crappy British weather. Thankfully, they are both nice and comfortable to clutch. That's thanks to the nice curvaceous edges, as you can see there, just really nice fit for the palm. And of course, they are both absolute beasts, so one-handed use might be a little bit tricky, you would expect, but thankfully there are some one-handed features to help out with that, which we'll touch on in a bit. And the good news is they both rock a bit of Type-C USB action for charging back up and also for transferring data with a computer and such forth. And you do get a 3.5mm headphone jack on both these smartphones too. When it comes to the screen tech, as mentioned before, it's a 5.9 incher here on the Moto G6 Plus. It's an IPS display, and here on the right, the Moto G7 Plus, it is a 6.2 inch LTPS display. In both cases, you get a full HD plus resolution, so it's nice and crisp, despite the fact that they're both quite spacious panels. If I dive on into the display settings, you can actually configure the color output on both these panels as well. Slightly different, as you can see, you've got a choice of natural, boosted or saturated colors here on the Moto G7 Plus. The older version, you had a choice between standard or vibrant. You can also play around with the likes of the color temperature as well. And of course, you've got a night light feature here on the Moto G7 Plus, just filters the blue light, keeps it a nice, easy on the eye experience. You do get something similar as well here on the G6 Plus, but you have to go into the Moto app for that, and there's the night display option there. And so by default, those colors appear a little bit warmer here on the Moto G6 Plus compared with the Moto G7 Plus, certainly by default. If we dive on into a photo, however, there's not a massive amount of difference. As you see, those colors are still quite vibrant when they are set to their default color modes. Certainly for, sort of mid-range smartphones, you get some nice punchy output there without it being really artificial or in your face. And certainly no worries in terms of the likes of brightness or anything like that either. If we bump both panels all the way up to their maximum levels, you'll see that they are quite strong. You can certainly have no problems on a nice, bright, sunshiny day. So the Moto G6 Plus is probably ever so slightly more powerful on that maximum setting, but certainly the G7 Plus we've used outside on a quite overcast day has been absolutely fine. Now when it comes to the audio, the older Moto G6 Plus just pumps the sound out of this top speaker here, whereas in the new Moto G7 Plus you actually get stereo speaker sound. There's a speaker grill at the bottom as well. It's definitely a more punchy, powerful sound as well. Let's compare both of them now side by side. And then the G7 Plus. So you see, in terms of the general volume, they're pretty much even, but certainly the Moto G7 Plus seems to have a more full-bodied sound. It doesn't sound quite as tinny. If you dive on into the sound settings as well, you'll see you've got a bit of support for Dolby audio there, something which you don't get on the older Moto G6 Plus. And there's generally more customization options and everything for the audio as well. Of course, if you are going to be listening to music, I would highly recommend connecting headphones all the same, because even though it's a bit better than the G6 Plus via those internal speakers, music quality still ain't great. Now, both of these Gs sport Google's Android OS, of course. Here in the Moto G6 Plus, it is still sadly Android Oreo way, or waiting on that Pie update. Hopefully it should be coming soon. Whereas, of course, as you'd expect in 2019, the Moto G7 Plus comes with Android version 9 pre-installed. The overall experience is very, very similar. Of course, you've got your Google feed, notifications are basically set up exactly the same. Just a few differences in terms of the look and the feel. So as you can see, for instance, the Moto G7 Plus, the menu is a bit more colourful, a bit more vibrant, a bit more interesting than the older Moto G6 Plus effort, but most of the same features are still in there. So for instance, you dive into the security, you've of course got the fingerprint sensor security, and you've also got a nice bit of face unlock action too. The only new addition here on the G7 Plus is you can lift to unlock the smartphone as well, but they both basically work the same. The facial recognition, it's nice and responsive and accurate. Doesn't work so great in low light or when you're wearing sunglasses, but apart from that, just fine. And unsurprisingly, on both the Moto G6 Plus and the G7 Plus, you get the Moto app as well, and this adds a whole bunch of bonus features on top of Android. However, it is actually slightly different in terms of the actual features that you get. So for instance, the Moto Voice Beta here on the Moto G6 Plus is now a full-on Moto Voice option. It's particularly good if you do a lot of driving. It can announce your messages and any calls that are coming through, so you don't have to actually take your eyes off the road to look at your smartphone screen. Definitely a good one. And sadly, the Moto Key feature appears to have been culled for the G7 Plus as well. Kind of a shame, because it did save you a bit of time, allowed you to autofill your username and password with a quick scan of your fingerprint, so it's still nice and secure. You do, of course, have Google autofill here on the Moto G7 Plus, but there's no fingerprint scanning involved, so it's not quite as secure. As you can see, though, you do get the gesture support on both in the form of Moto Actions. This allows you to, for instance, do a 3-fingered screenshot, 1-button nav. You can do that double wrist twist in order to quick launch the camera, or a karate chop in order to turn on the torch, definitely one of our favourites. And both smartphones, of course, have a nice bit of swipe to shrink screen action as well. All you need to do is swipe from the centre of the screen down to one corner. Takes a bit of getting used to, certainly, but there you go, you eventually get the hang of it. And then it's much, much easier to just pull down that notifications panel and play around with all of your various apps. Thankfully, both smartphones also allow you to pull down that notifications panel from anywhere on the screen, so that also helps out with the one-handed use. And the Moto G7 Plus even allows you to pull down the notifications panel with the swipe of that fingerprint sensor as well. You'll find that option hidden away in the system settings. Also here on the Moto G6 Plus, you have the old Moto Display feature. This basically just showed notifications on the screen while the phone was hibernating, so you could see if anything interesting popped up. That's actually evolved into the Peak Display here on the G7 Plus. What you do with this is you basically just kind of wave your hand over the G7 Plus while it's hibernating, and it'll bring up the Peak Display, and this will show you obviously time, date and all that, and also if there's any waiting notifications. And what you can do is you can then just press and hold on the notifications. It gives you an update on what is waiting for you, and you can just swipe up, and then of course you'll have to scan your fingerprint in order to get straight into it. Now, performance here on the older Moto G6 Plus is still absolutely fine. It's from a Snapdragon 630 chipset backed by either 4 or 6 gigs of RAM, and basically your apps still load up when you tap them. You occasionally see the odd little stumble here and there, but on the whole, it does the job nicely. That has been updated here in the new Moto G7 Plus, as you would expect, to a Snapdragon 636 chipset, again backed by the same 4 gigs of RAM. Truth be told, in everyday use, there's not a noticeable massive amount of difference between the two. As you can see, apps just basically load up when you tap them, no problems whatsoever. But there is no denying that the 636 is a bit nippier. Sometimes when you're really zipping through the interfaces, you'll see less of that sort of stammering. And for any benchmark enthusiasts out there, unsurprisingly, you'll see a clear difference between the two as well. It's not a massive gulf or anything like that, but as you can see, the single core and the multi-core scores are better on the fresher Moto G7 Plus. When it comes to a good bit of PUBG Mobile, as you'll see there, obviously the fresher phone does launch up the game a bit nippier as well. If we dive into a game, we go into the graphics settings. As you can see, it's obviously set to quite low levels. You do have the medium frame rate setting, and it defaults to smooth graphics, so basically about as bog standard and less detail as possible. It's still playable on both smartphones. You will see a stutter and a stammer here and there. Thankfully nothing game breaking, so it is possible to play a full game on both of these handsets. But if you are going to be doing a lot of gaming, we definitely recommend, if possible, getting something a little bit different like the Honor Play, the Honor 8X, which does actually have that dedicated GPU turbo feature. Whee! So as you can see there, we've got a decent little frame rate going. Detail levels are absolutely fine as well. You'll still spot people, a good distance away and everything, helped along by, of course, the fact that it's a nice spacious screen. When the action gets quite heavy, it can get a little bit choppy, but as I say, nothing too game breaking, just ever so slightly distracting and annoying. And I'm already being shot to bits. Go away. As for the battery life, you actually get a slightly smaller battery here on the new Moto G7 Plus. It's a 3000 mAh cell compared with the 3200 mAh that you get here on the older Moto G6 Plus. All the same, you should still happily make it through a full day no matter your choice. And you do get a bit of turbo charge action on the go with both of these smartphones as well, although it's a 27 watt option here on the G7 Plus, so a bit nippier. And rounding off the specs, you get 64 gigs of storage with both of these smartphones as well. And they both support micro SD memory cards as well, up to 256 gigs here on the older G6 Plus, and up to half a terabyte, 512 gigabytes here on the G7 Plus. Now, if we flip these Gs over again, you'll see that both the Moto G6 Plus and the G7 Plus sport a dual lens rear camera. So here on the G6 Plus, it's a 12 megapixel primary lens. It's an f1.7 aperture, so pretty good for those low light shots. Here on the Moto G7 Plus, that's been boosted to a 16 megapixel primary lens. Again, f1.7. We actually get some optical image stabilization with the newer model as well. And in both cases, you get a 5 megapixel secondary depth sensor as well, just to help out with the likes of your portrait shots. As for the front-facing camera tech, it's an 8 megapixel selfie snapper here on the Moto G6 Plus, and that's been boosted to a 12 megapixel effort here on the G7 Plus. Now, if we dive on into the camera apps on both smartphones, you'll see it's the same basic setup, the same layout and everything, but there are some differences in terms of the features. The auto photo mode is basically the same setup. You get the likes of the active photos option, which can basically bring your gallery to life by showing a little video snippet with every photo you take. You can change up into manual modes at any point if you want to play around with the likes of the ISO level, the white balance, and that's nice and easy to tinker with. Of course, you do get a nice bit of histogram action here on the G7 Plus now as well, just to help out a bit. You can get straight into video mode with just a quick tap. You can actually shoot 4K resolution video with either of these handsets. And there's also an option for full HD at either 30 or 60 frames per second. And if you just swipe this way, you get into the bonus camera modes. You see, not much difference between the two, just this face filters modes here in the Moto G6 Plus. But you get all the basic stuff, the portrait mode, the cutout mode, which basically can cut out the background and replace it with some funky vibrant colors and such forth. Spot color, which just highlights one particular color in your photo and turns everything else black and white. And you do get the funky cinemagraph mode here on the G7 Plus as well, which basically animates one section of your photo while keeping everything else still. And of course, you've got slow motion and time-lapse video and the ability to stream direct to YouTube Live. Diving into the settings though, there are some new AI features here on the G7 Plus, which you don't get on the older G6 Plus. So for instance, you've got the smart composition feature. This can basically crop into a shot using the rule of thirds, and also automatically level your shot as well, straighten it up if it detects it's a wee bit wonky. And you also now get auto smile capture as well. But apart from that, it is basically business as usual. So I've done a full comparison with the Moto G7 Plus and all of the other Moto G7 handsets, the Play, the Power, and the standard G7 as well. So go check that out if you want to see the full family. And I'm going to do a full camera comparison with the G7 Plus and the rest of the G7 range as well, so stay tuned for that. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Are you still tempted by the older G6 Plus, or are you going to spend a bit of extra cash on that G7 Plus? And don't forget to poke, subscribe, and ding that notifications bell to be the first to see the latest and greatest mobile tech in action. Cheers everyone, love you!